Okay, I'm just getting us up onto Facebook and YouTube. Anyone that wants to join us there. Very good. Everyone else that joined?
It's like the Brady Bunch.
All right.
Rabbi, thank you for the idea of joining with the Maimonides Mishnah. Very good.
Well, I'm sorry, Barbara, say that again.
I said, thank you for the idea about joining the Maimonides Mishnah. It's very good.
Fantastic. Yes. Today is day one. If you didn't start yet, we're 1 for 1, Candy. I like it. I don't know if that's what you were saying with your thumbs up. But anyway, if you didn't study today's Rambam one chapter, it's you still have time to do it. And you can always make it up if you miss it, but you don't want to fall behind right in the beginning. It's a very important teaching today. It shows us how the oral teachings of the Torah are given. Well, actually, just a moment. Let me do it here. Okay. There we go. So it teaches us how in today's, I'm going to give you the brief synopsis of the value of today's study of Rambam, of the chapter 1 cycle. Maimonides documents from generation to generation, 40 generations from Mount Sinai until the writing of the Talmud, a direct lineage of transferring the oral teachings from generation to generation. And he does that in order for us to understand and to know that when the Torah was given, it was given with oral teachings as well, which is fundamental to know, and that it was transferred from generation to generation, and we can actually follow that. And he follows the names of each person in each generation. So it's very significant to the transmission of our oral tradition of the Torah. And then it continues tomorrow, and it's if you're not convinced yet, jump on. Just jump on, do it. Give yourself 20 minutes a day. It's fantastic. It's just an eye opener. It's also going to put your head in a very clear place, in a very healthy place. If we only feed our minds the news today, especially today more than any other time, it's just insanity. We live in I don't know if I should say this, but we live in an insane world. What's going on the streets? I don't mean even literally what's going on in the streets, but even the ideas that are being propagated on the streets. Never mind the politics, just talking about the way of thinking and what's driving. I can sit here and tell you on both sides of the aisle, the craziness of ideas that people are spewing is actually destructive. It's destructive. So we need to get our heads into a clear place, and a clear place. You read Maimonides. He was a physician. He was an advisor to the Sultan. He was a man who wore many hats, and he had a fantastically deep and clear head. And he's teaching us the Torah, which is the truth. So it's just something we should all be plugging into. All you have to do is go to Chabad.org and just go to Daily Rambam and look for chapter 1, and you can read the text or listen to the audio or watch the video, whichever one fits your fancy. Do it. And if there's something you don't get or you have a question, just continue moving on. You don't need to understand everything. That is station identification number 1. Number 2, I'm going to say, I know that Heather is with us, but I'm still going to say, you'll be receiving an email, God willing, Monday morning from me with what I'm going to share with you. Heather is, I don't know if she's in the hospital yet, but she's going to be admitted or was already admitted to the hospital today for a week of more intense chemotherapy in preparation for a bone marrow transplant. I think I got that right. And it's very, very serious. I don't need to, I hope I don't need to explain that. It's very, very serious. Beyond anything I can express and beyond anything I can really even feel. And at the same time, Hashem is with her as he is with all of us. Hashem is the one who determines what happens in this world. No one and nothing else can determine that or affect that. And we need to, the most effective thing for us to be able to see God's blessings in this world is when we can, and this is not an easy thing to do. This is not something that we do on the fly. You can't just wake up one day and convince yourself that you trust God. But we can develop trust in God. And that's a struggle we all have, and we all need to deepen. So there are two things I'm going to, which are going to be in the email, but I want to give you a heads up already. One is to make it your business every single day, without fail, to show genuine care for Heather by reciting chapter 47 from Tehillim. That should be on your schedule. If you think you're going to forget, which is probably likely that we would forget, amongst all the other things we have going on in our lives, put a reminder on your phone every single day. Let it pop up or somehow trigger an email, whatever system you use, to read chapter 47 every single day. One of the most meaningful things for Heather is a person who has unbelievable faith in Hashem. That's she's an unbelievable example to every single one of us of what it means to have faith in Hashem, and trust in Hashem in an unbelievable way. Really, I mean, I'm like I feel like a midget when I talk to her, but she also gets tremendous support from the knowledge, and she knows this very deeply. I know that she knows this from the way she expresses it, that she has an entire community with her and behind her all the time. And this is true. It's true, but it will be truer with every additional person in our community who's saying her chapter of Tehillim every single day. Secondly, I think I'm going to be sharing this with Heather as well. Every one of us should study. I started these lessons. I'll tell you that my life is changing. My life is changing as I am recording video classes on the Gate of Trust. My life is truly changing from it, just from teaching it. It is one of those areas which has a direct impact on your life. Direct, because it speaks directly to our real life. So I want to ask every one of you as well, if you don't have the link if you don't have the link, I will be sending it out it's a playlist on YouTube of all of the videos just on the Gate of Trust. Some of the classes, I do want to tell you that some of the classes in particular in the beginning, like maybe the second and third class in the introduction, can be a little bit, I may lose you a little bit just from the content, but as it goes on into chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4, it gets into the real questions we all have about trusting in God. It's really practical and really addresses everything. And it may not give all the answers that you want to hear, but it gives the answers that you need to hear. And it will give you the ability to go through life trusting in Hashem. There is nothing more tranquil and peaceful and liberating than the ability to go through life with trust in Hashem. And every bit that we increase in that is transformative. But the thing is that we're going to do this together so that when we daven for Heather, that we will know much more deeply than we know right now that Hashem is the one who determines how things turn out. Odds are completely irrelevant. You can have a country, you can have a political power against you. If Hashem doesn't want them to be successful, they will not be able to touch you one iota. It's all boils down to Hashem. And every one of us that imbues this trust in Hashem, that Heather will have a complete recovery and a speedy recovery, and will be restored to her full health without any damage from the treatments that she's had, which itself would be a miracle. That trust will make it happen. Heather has the trust, and we all need to have that trust as well. So this is all by way of introduction. So let's turn to this week's parsha, and how we always see, as the Alter Rebbe told us, we have to live with the times, which is the weekly Torah portion. How the Torah portion always, sometimes it's harder to see, sometimes it's clear, but the Torah portion always speaks about what's going on in the world, and that's why the Alter Rebbe says, study the weekly Torah portion to guide yourself on what's going on. There's a lot. There are a number of correlations. The obvious one is anti-Semitism that we hear about, which I'm not going to comment on. It's complex, and I'm not going to get into that. But the Pinchas responded to a nation that was trying to infiltrate us spiritually, to hurt us spiritually, because they hated Jews. But another point is the way they did that. And the way they did that is they did that through two things that the prophet Bilam advised them to do, which were successful, unfortunately. One is adultery. Use your daughters to seduce the Jewish men. And the second is for a deeper point, and that is idolatry. So that when your daughters entice the Jewish men, they will tell the Jewish men, bow down to this idol called Pa'ar, a form of idolatry. And the fascinating thing is, which I'm also not going to get into any politics over here, but what's going on in our country, tearing down statues, president responding, we're going to build a garden of statues, right? And actually, that's what the Jewish people were succumbing to. They were succumbing to bowing down to idols, not quite statues that are being torn down here, which are just statues of people. They're not idols. But at that time, it was idols. And we know that the Torah is very clear about, as one of the Ten Commandments, do not make a graven image. And Pa'ar was an idol. It wasn't just a graven image, it was also an idol. It was actually a prohibition of making sculptures. And so this is what I want to talk to you about, because one of the great things that we learn, and I'm just going to say this in a general sense, that as I've investigated, if you will, or conversed with different people about what's going on in, we'll say in regards to anti-Semitism in Philadelphia, we're in the hot seat now, right? I don't think I need to say any more. So what is the right response? One thing I've learned is the right response is not very simple. That's one thing I've learned. The right response is not very simple. I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? What the right response is, I'll leave to you for now. But one thing I would just want to say is it's not very simple. And this is one of the things that the Rebbe has demonstrated repeatedly in the way he responded to different people about different things, is that very often he did not take your classic, simplistic, knee-jerk reaction response. He actually slowed down. I mean, obviously the Rebbe saw things in a much deeper sense, and he opened up, he unpackaged the issue to show that it's not black and white, and it's not simple to just jump to the knee-jerk reaction, but we have to unpack this and understand what we're dealing with very well. There was a gentleman, which I'm curious, you can raise your hand if you ever heard of him. I'm curious if anyone ever heard of him. He passed away in 1973, I think before I was born, being that I was born in December of 1973. His name was Jacques Lipschitz. Jacques Lipschitz, anyone ever hear of him? Anyone? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Razan. Fantastic. We have one hand that I see. So I can't see everyone on the screen at one time here. But okay, great. Candy, did you have your hand up there? Okay, great. So he was a very gifted sculptor, and very, very gifted. He was born in the early 1900s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And he was born into a religious home. He ended up going to France. He ended up having to flee France during the war. But when he was in France before the war, he was already sculpting very impressive sculptures, which were already noted. And then he came to America, and then he was invited back to France. And when he went back to France to sculpt again. He came back to America. I don't want to get into all the details of his life, but he remarried in America to a woman by the name of Eula. And there was a point in 1953 around, or somewhere around there, I don't remember the exact year, in the 1950s, that he suddenly got very sick. He had terrible stomach pains, to the extent that by the time, which he had for a while, but he ignored. And then at some point, he had to be rushed to the hospital. He was already unconscious. They operated on him. They investigated. They found out that he had, I think, stomach cancer. and they operated on him, and he was very concerned. He didn't know if he was going to live. In fact, he told the doctor that if you see that I'm not going to come back to myself and be able to sculpt, then please make sure that my life ends. He said, because it'll be much harder for me to do that to myself. That's what he said. It shows you, though, more than anything else, how deep sculpting was to who he was as a person, which, by the way, in the gate of trust, you are going to hear also the guidance of how a person should determine what type of a livelihood they should approach, which has a lot to do with who we are, if we can get to discovering who we are. So he was very deeply connected to sculpting. It was a deep talent that God gifted him with. Anyway, his wife was told by her brother, you should go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe to get a blessing for your husband, for Jacques. So she went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, and she introduced herself, and the Rebbe said, I know who you are. The Rebbe met Jacques' parents in the 1930s, I think in Berlin. They asked him to please look out for their son, because the Rebbe then moved to France, to Paris, to please look out for their son, who lived in Paris. The Rebbe actually sought him out, never met him, but sought out his welfare and how he was doing, and knew a lot about him already. And so he said, I know exactly who you are and who your husband is, and tell your husband he's going to be fine. He will live. That's what the Rebbe told him. Halavai, we say, if only everyone would get such a blessing when they're sick. So, but we transfer this blessing to Heather, that Heather is going to be as vibrant as ever. God willing, very soon we're going to see you, Heather, stronger than ever. And you're going to continue to be the living miracle and sanctification of God's name, that God is the one who makes things happen in this world. So in fact, and then the Rebbe told her, Eula, that, and tell your husband, please, when he gets better, to please come and visit me. And that's what happened. He got better. And he said, he told his wife, if I get better, he wasn't a chassid. So he said, if I get better, then I will visit the Rebbe. He got better and he visited the Rebbe. The Rebbe told him, I want to ask you, I have one request to make of you. What was the request? Giving you a pause just for a moment to see if you can think. What would the Rebbe's request to him be? The Rebbe's request was, please put on tefillin every single day and daven to Hashem. I see some of you got it. Very good. That was the Rebbe's request to him. Please put on tefillin. He knew how. He was raised religious. He hadn't done it for many years. And he said, Rebbe, by the way, before the Rebbe made a request, as he describes, he lay his soul bare before the Rebbe. He shared with the Rebbe everything about himself, the good and the bad and the ugly and everything. He was very, very open. And then the Rebbe didn't comment on anything. And he told the Rebbe, I don't eat kosher and I don't do anything religious. And the Rebbe just said, I have one request for you. Please put on tefillin every day. And he said that from that day on, he put on tefillin every single day, and he would daven in French. You can daven in any language, as I hope everyone knows. So, and that's what he did. The Rebbe asked him when he traveled on tours, because I guess he had shows that he would attend, that he should always visit the Chabad house. There were not many Chabad houses in the 60s and early 70s. There were not many Chabad houses in the country, in the world. But the Rebbe told him, whenever you go somewhere, try and visit the Chabad house there, and see if you can help them in any way. And when you tell the rabbi who you are, and they don't know who you are, they haven't heard of you, tell them to ask one of their supporters to mention to one of their supporters your name, and then they'll know who you are. So the Chabad rabbis sometimes, maybe we've gotten to know a little bit more with the internet, but still a little bit lacking sometimes on that side. So he once went to California, and in California, the senior shliach, who was in charge of the entire state of California, his name is Shlomo Kunyan. If you ever go to California and you're in Los Angeles, you can track him down and say hello to him, and you'll know exactly what I'm going to tell you right now. He's a very, very colorful man who has a very, very, very strong personality. Okay? And that's why he built up an empire for Chabad in California. He did things, I can tell you stories about him which are just astounding. He's a man with tremendous inner strength. So Jacques Lipschitz calls him up when he comes to California, to Los Angeles. And he says, hello, this is Jacques Lipschitz. Do you know who I am? So Rabbi Kunin has no idea who he is. Rabbi Kunin, a guy calls you up. He says, my name is Jacques Lipschitz. Do you know who I am? So he says, my name is Shlomo Kunyan. Do you know who I am? He tells him back. It's like, what type of a hello is that? So Jacques laughs and he explains that, I'm a sculptor and the Rebbe asked me to always introduce myself to the Shliach and see if there's any way I can help, etc. So that's what he used to do. And he used to use his popularity to draw a bridge. Whenever he would speak, he would say, I put on tefillin every day and I pray to God. And this is very powerful. It's very powerful to have a person like that, which sometimes people are surprised that they are religious or develop a relationship with God, and the person speaks about that openly. The Rebbe once wrote to him a letter. There was a lot of correspondence between him and the Rebbe once wrote to him about the prohibition of making an image, which of course he wasn't excited to hear. But then the Rebbe told him that there are ways in the code of Jewish law that permit the making of an image. The Rebbe told him, firstly, a lot of your images are abstract enough that they're not considered to be direct images. But then there are also other ways of making an image that are permissible. And the Rebbe told him, my experience has taught me that people who follow the guidelines of the Torah find much more success in their work. So that was just part of the Rebbe's communication with him. In 1973, he passed away. And he was, right before he passed away, he was on a trip with his wife, and they were sleeping. And he passed away in the middle of the night. But what happened was he woke up for a moment. And when he woke up, his wife saw that he was not well at all. And he suddenly tells his wife this thing, that there are three projects that I have almost completed. His second wife, was also a sculptor. So he told his wife, there are three, if I don't get to finish them, please finish them for me. And he passed away right after he said that. So she came to the Rebbe and she told the Rebbe that my husband was in the middle of completing a sculpture of a phoenix for Hadassah Hospital, which is on Mount Scopus. And some people told me that the phoenix is not a Jewish symbol. So I don't know if it's proper for me to finish it and to present it. They commissioned us, many women commissioned us to make this for Hadassah Hospital. So the Rebbe turned to Rabbi Krinsky, one of his secretaries, who I guess was in the room. Usually there was no one in the room, but he was there, and he asked him to pass him the book of Job, the book of Eov, and he passed him a book of Eov, and the Rebbe opened up the book to chapter 29, verse 18, and the Rebbe read to her. It says, "U'kichol arbe yomim," and like a bird, like a chol, which is a type of a bird, you should have many days. And Rashi says, what is this bird chol? So Rashi says, "Oif," it's a bird, u'shmoi chol, and its name is chol. V'lo nipnisa olav misa. It was not cursed with death, like everything else in the world is cursed with. Shalaita me'etz hadas, because it didn't taste from the tree of knowledge. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but essentially, in a general sense, it means it was not affected by the eating of the tree of knowledge, which brought death to the world, and therefore it doesn't have death. Ula b'seif elaf shana, at the end of 1,000 years, mischadish b'chezel narusay. Every 1,000 years, it's reborn and comes back to its youth. If you know anything about a phoenix, which is a mythical bird, I believe, in other traditions, but we know now that it's actually a real entity, which Rashi tells us about. They have this mythical bird that lives for 1,000 years and then gets reborn from ashes or from dust or whatever it is. So the Rebbe said, you see, it's not a Gentile symbol; it's a Jewish symbol. And on the contrary, it's a symbol that is an eternal symbol. So the Rebbe encouraged her, and she felt very, very good that she was able to finish the work of her husband. And in general, it's a very big mitzvah to follow the words, the instructions of someone when they're on their deathbed. So she, in fact, completed it and presented it to Hadassah Hospital. one of the things that the Rebbe communicated with him, which is very meaningful, and the essential point I want to bring out to all of us, are these words. I'm going to read. I don't know if this is I don't know if the Rebbe wrote them in English or this is a translation of what the Rebbe wrote to him. But regardless, this is the way I've seen it. In a deeper sense, sculpting is the ability to transform, to a certain extent, the material into spiritual, even where the creation is in still life. That means in inanimate, still, it's not moving life. So in other words, when someone takes a stone and they chisel away and they bring out this figure, right? What we suddenly see out of something which is just a stone is suddenly something spiritual comes out, something moving, something that can touch someone, even though it doesn't have life, but suddenly out of this stone came spirit. And certainly where the artistic work has to do with living creatures and humans, how much more so if the art medium is used to advance ideas, especially reflecting Torah and mitzvahs, Jewish observance, which would raise artistic skill to its highest level. The Rebbe is basically telling him that sculpting is such a powerful thing, because what you're doing when you're sculpting is you're chiseling away the parts that are covering on the spirit of this matter, and you reveal something which is of great spirit, of great energy, even when it's an inanimate object. And all the more so when we do that in the direction which inspires revealing the mission of Torah and mitzvahs and Jewish observance, that raises our artistic talent that God has endowed us with to the highest level. And what this teaches every single one of us is the need to be the sculptor in our own lives, which means to literally take a chisel and to chisel away at the areas of our life that need to be knocked away, and to be able to bring out what should be left as much as possible, is a part of us which is very focused on the very reason Hashem put us here, on the very reason that Hashem made me a Jew. And one of the ways of expressing that is by studying Torah, by studying, for example, by studying Rambam every day with tens of thousands of other Jews who are studying the exact same study every day. That's actually chiseling away. That means I'm taking 20 minutes of my time, which would be invested in some other stuff. There's no question, I have no doubt, I can say this unhesitatingly for myself and for everyone, and you'll apologize if you get insulted by this. I mean, please forgive me if you get insulted by this, but there are surely 20 minutes every day that we spend on things which are really of no value. You know, we read, we just, whatever, we chill out, whatever it is. In those 20 minutes, we can actually sculpt away that time and chisel ourselves to Torah study. And it's a gift to ourselves, actually, because we're going to learn so much and we're going to be able to think in a much healthier fashion. And this is true with any area, you know, anything we can take on in our life which aligns us more with the reason Hashem has put us here. Sculpting our lives, so that when people see us, every person carries a certain energy. Sometimes I wonder, you know, what it is about certain people that make them so inspiring. And sometimes it's a little bit elusive. And the reason why it's elusive is because it's not something that's really concrete and tangible. It's in the energy that this person brings to what they do that touches the people around them. It's an unspoken power, which is really a beautiful power and somewhat of a gift, but a gift that we all have, but that energy only comes out when we chisel our lives away, when we chisel our lives so that we are actually very, very focused and we're not covered by all of the accessories that we bring into our life, which are unnecessary. So I want to say L'chaim to all of us. As you know, our world needs refined people. That's what we need more than anything else now. We need refined people. And every one of us has to be an example of that. And whichever path we are willing to go, it makes no, you know, as long as we're moving in the right direction in general. It's, we all have our different passions to go, to focus on this, to focus on that. Whatever it may be, we need to refine ourselves. We need to be examples. People who are upstanding, people who live by values, people who are not willing to throw our beliefs under the rug just for agendas. That's a major that's a major point. We have to be examples to our children. We have to be examples to our friends, even when we have friends, which we all do, who look at us and say, "Oh, you're crazy that you believe this or you think that." Right? But we're still friends, but they feel that way. That's fine. We have to continue being the example we know we need to be. And we change the world that way. So l'chaim, let us all sculpt our lives to the way and fashion it to the way Hashem has intended that we do. L'chaim. I'm sorry for all of you who are holding glasses that I made you wait a half hour until we could say l'chaim. I forgot to say it at the beginning. That's a sincere apology. But have a wonderful, blessed Shabbos, everyone.
You too.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good Shabbos.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Shabbos.
Everyone.
Shabbos.
Stay well, everyone. Stay well.
Yes.
No.
Good Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos and Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Shalom.
Rabbi, whatever you said, Heather.